Good morning. Welcome to the Workers' Mic right here on 720 WGN, powered by the Midwest Coalition of Labor. My name is Ken Edwards with the Midwest Coalition of Labor. Sitting to my left is Ed Maher with the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Ken. Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
We missed you. It feels like I haven't seen you in forever.
It has been a while. I was traveling. I was in New York.
Hunting sharks, if I remember correctly.
I was visiting family and doing a little fishing, Ed.
Yeah.
And
were there sharks involved?
There were some sharks involved.
The rumors are true.
We caught some sharks, let them go, catch and release.
Yeah.
And then from there, I caught basically nothing for the next week and a half. That's why they call it fishing, not catching.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was fun. I had a good time. I listened to your shows, and I listened to Phil sitting in for me. And thank you, Phil. You guys did a great job.
Phil is always a treat on the show. Thank you, Phil, for always coming in.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Phil. It was. Anyway, it was refreshing to see family and friends and spend a little time on the water, so that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard you went to see a concert this weekend.
Yeah.
Or was it? When was it? It was last week?
No, it was on, what was it, Thursday night?
Thursday.
Yeah, Guns N' Roses.
Awesome.
Yeah, they should call it Guns N' Roses and, I don't know, Flames or something, because it was 110 degrees outside.
How was it? Was it a good show?
It was good. I never saw Guns N' Roses before, but Axl is still able to move around a little bit, and he can still kind of sing. And
well, you know that my son's middle name is Axl.
Yeah,
Evan Axl.
Yeah, it was a cool concert to see, and I mean Slash is. I mean there's only one.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad that you got to see him. I have been lucky enough to see him way back in the day. So always put on a good show. Yeah,
concerts at Wrigley are a good time too.
I've never seen one.
Yeah, it's worth checking out.
You're a Cubs fan?
You know what? I would say that I'm a Cubs fan, but I haven't followed baseball too closely these last few years. It's there's not much to love in the Chicago baseball scene right now.
You're a typical Cubs fan then. Fair weather.
Yeah, for sure. I make no bones about it. Yeah.
Well,
the last couple of years, I'd rather read a catalog than watch baseball. Chicago baseball at least.
Yeah, it is a boring sport, in my humble opinion. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you're more into the action-packed fishing.
Standing there doing nothing.
Yeah, that's action-packed.
Good point.
It makes baseball look just terrible.
It's barely a sport.
No, it's not a sport.
So what do we got this week? There's a ton of stuff. You had mentioned something that I wanted to comment on about Starbucks, and I just want to start with that really quickly and just say a couple of words about it. And that is, you had talked about some of the Starbucks stores dropping flyers on their break rooms about how to decertify the union.
Right.
And, shockingly, they're going to try and get rid of the unions, right?
Well, yeah, they waited. They let the elections happen. They sat idle for a year, wouldn't negotiate, and now that the year has passed, they're going to start the decertification process.
And let me say something on that, and it's this, and that is, as a union, Starbucks Workers United, I think is what they're called.
Right.
You need to tell your members, it's called inoculation. You need to tell them what's going to happen.
Right.
Like winning the election, I hate to say it, is
the easy part.
It's the easy part, right? It's like, okay, yeah, rah, we're gonna join a union, yay. Getting the first contract is really hard, especially when you're going up against a company like Starbucks that has, more money than God. And understands fully well that there's zero penalty for not negotiating, right?
Yeah.
And why
would they negotiate?
They're literally not negotiating, and then they're going to let the year go by and go, oh, now you can get rid of the union
because they haven't done anything for you, and
look, they're ineffective. But we're making them ineffective,
right? I mean, but your point is 100% correct. If you tell workers, now that we're here, this is what your employer is going to do,
right?
Because union avoidance folks that work within the human resources field, they have a playbook, and the playbook's pretty much the same everywhere.
It has been the same for decades.
So
if
people see. If you tell them this is what they're going to do now, then they see it. It's like, okay, well, the union
told me that.
Actually, knows what's going on here. And if you can take them off of their playbook, which is what we always talk about here, that's how you are successful in any kind of organizing or getting to a contract. Because if you take them out of their playbook, they generally don't seem to think too quickly on their feet.
Yeah, they don't. So I think it's incumbent upon unions, these nascent unions, the Starbucks and the Amazons and, grocery workers and Trader Joe's and these companies, that are being organized by, independent unions, if you will, that learn that piece of organizing, and that is give an inoculation. When I organized, I would actually give the guys a handbook, and it had all the flyers in it that we've seen elsewhere or other places. And sure enough, their employers would use the exact same thing. They would just
Right.
change the name. And so the guys felt that, like, 150 knows what they're talking about, or
Right.
the union knows what they're talking about. So it helped them alleviate, like, oh my God, they just put something on a bulletin board. Who cares?
Right.
And the thing about this is, I wanted to just end with this, and we'll take a quick break and then get into the heart of the show. But, Joe Biden and your administration, change the labor laws, for Christ's sakes. Please, just like make Starbucks pay for breaking the law.
Right.
It is blatantly illegal to refuse to bargain and bargain in good faith, but refuse to bargain at all. And what's the penalty? You post a notice and say, I'm going to bargain now, and I'm going to bargain in good faith,
Right.
quote unquote.
Yeah.
So there's no penalty for it. And then, it just, once again, I think we had that guy, I can't remember his name, but he wrote that book, David Madland, I think is his name.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, it's criminal how lax these labor laws are. And, yes, it's great with the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act and great work and all that kind of great stuff. But we really do need a sea change in labor law because it hasn't been changed since the 1930s, Ed.
Well, we talked last week about how the General Counsel of the National Labor
Yeah.
Relations Board, Jennifer Abruzzo,
Yep.
is trying to bring card check back.
It's awesome.
Through through old cases. I think it was called the Silk Ivy or Ivy Silk is what they called the policy at the NLRB. But this is something that we've been pushing, whether it was the Employee Free Choice Act, and now it's part of the PRO Act, and it just sits in Congress and nothing happens.
I should know the name of that case as a union labor lawyer.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well,
Joy Silk or something like that.
Joy
Yeah.
Silk, I think that's what it was.
There you go. All right, Ken.
Yeah. But yeah.
But
so-
here's the thing, though, Ed. I mean, that's great. Card check is wonderful. We have card check in the public sector here in Illinois.
Right.
And guess what? I used to show charts of where we were, just in our own union, 150, and that was my job as public sector. And here was the chart, and we were sort of increasing by 5%, 10%, and then card check came in and whoa, big spike, right? Because
Yeah.
the cards became our election. We didn't have to worry about the anti-union campaigns anymore and things like that. That's great, but that didn't get us to a first contract.
Right.
What we passed in Illinois, which I'm saying that should be passed nationally, is interest arbitration. First contracts can't get to a contract, make the parties sit down. If they can't negotiate a contract, they have to go to arbitration,
Right.
binding arbitration on a first contract, winner take all on each issue. And we've talked about this. We'll talk about it again. That is the way to solve this problem. Just pass first contract interest arbitration.
For sure, and I couldn't agree more with you. And what I'm sort of getting at is that Jennifer Abruzzo has recognized that things aren't happening in Congress, and so card check, there's a way to get there just within the NLRB.
Right.
So maybe there are ways to get some of this other stuff done, within the agencies. Interest arbitration, I don't know. I mean, that's a big one. But she has indicated that she sees workers being taken advantage of
Sure.
all over the country, and she's going to find ways
Getting rid of captive audience
to
meetings.
level, yeah, exactly, to level the playing field. And she's a bulldog. I'm a fan.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Where did she come from? She was with a union. I can't remember what it was.
I can't
SEIU
remember.
maybe?
I can't rember off the
don't
top of
know.
my head, but
Yeah.
I saw her
We
speak
might
in
want to start.
Chicago here.
We should research stuff before we get on the air.
It takes a long time.
It does. It's like Google.
Yeah, I'm just watching TikTok while I drive all the way down here, so it puts me at ease, gets me nice and relaxed before the show. Are you a TikTok user?
Yeah, but my TikToks, it gives you an algorithm,
Yeah,
right? And
Yeah.
my algorithm literally is fishing videos. I nonstop fishing videos. Like, why can't I get like the I shouldn't say. Why can't I get the other TikToks? You know what I mean? The dancing TikToks, if you will.
I don't know, but mine's pretty much full. Mine is like 60% Hezbollah. You ever see that
what's
little
that?
guy? He's like a little guy from Dagestan, which is a republic in Russia.
That's a made up country.
It's not. It's where all these UFC fighters come from. It's like a whole little region of people who just battle. But he's like 3 feet tall, and he's like 30 years old, but he looks like a 4-year-old kid. But he like smokes, and he's afraid of dogs, and it's hilarious.
That's your TikTok.
I recently got turned on to Hezbollah, and he's the funniest.
And it's
little
Russian.
dude. He's a little Russian guy, but
Did you hear about the guy that tried to have a coup against Putin and then mysteriously his plane crashed?
Yeah. His plane. They showed the video, and it was just falling from the sky. That's not a crash. And they said that there was an explosion inside the plane. But imagine you're the pilot, okay?
Yeah.
You're the pilot,
And that guy
like,
walks on your plane.
like,
I would be like,
oh, man.
yeah, you're on the plane. I can't work today.
Yeah, the engines don't seem to be working. We're gonna have to ground this. But yeah, there were 3 crew members and I think 7 passengers.
My God. Don't mess with that guy.
I mean, I think everybody on the planet had Yevgeny Prigozhin on the top of their Deadpool. Yeah,
That's nice.
You knew. I mean, it's Russia.
Yeah,
You knew that was
sure.
going to happen.
Yeah. Well, Trump would have made that go away.
Well, that's what he says.
So he says.
We'll never know, Ken.
That's for sure. Hey, we got to take a quick break.
We're going to come back, and we got to talk about UAW.
We'll talk some serious,
Big news on the
serious
UAW
stuff.
strike coming up.
All right. We will be right back with more of the Workers' Mic right here on 720 WGN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Workers' Mic right here on 720 WGN. I'm Ken with the Midwest Coalition of Labor. Sitting next to me is Ed with the Operating Engineers Local 150.
Hey-o.
Hey, so big news.
Yeah, just Friday.
Yeah, UAW members, which is United Auto Workers, voted to go on strike.
Yeah,
And
they authorized the strike.
against the big three.
GM, General Motors, Ford, and then Stellantis.
What is Stellantis?
Stellantis is Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram.
Okay, I did not know
So
that.
it's like it's still the big 3. Just
Yeah.
But yeah, it was 97% of their members voted to authorize the strike. I think the contract expires, I want to say,
Soon.
Yeah, it's in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's 145,000 people, and that's about the same size as the workforce with UPS, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yep.
if this strike goes forward, it'll be enormous, and it would push 2023 to one of the biggest strike years probably in American history.
I read, and if you remember, just going backwards to the recession, right? These car makers, like the banks, were too big to fail. And I think everybody but Ford took a bailout. Taxpayer money.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Bailing them out. And I'm not saying I disagree with it, but they took a bailout. But what you don't hear about is the workers, right? The UAW members on the assembly line took hits on their wages, their pensions. They went to 2 tiers on wages, et cetera. They also shared in the pain. And lo and behold, when things got better, you think they shared in the gains?
No.
Of course not. Of course not.
Come on, Ken.
We're still in America.
Yeah.
It's still a capitalist society.
That's exactly right.
I read a quote or a number here, and I have to hold on a second. I have to read the number here.
You have a monocle?
Well, weren't you talking about monocle?
I mean, it's funny on radio when you break out a monocle and don't say anything. But
Yes, I have a monocle.
Ken has a monocle. I mean, I knew your age was rapidly advancing, but I didn't know it had gotten to that.
So now, in using my monocle, I just read that in 2023, I think last year, they built and made $250 billion in profits.
Between the big 3?
Not $250,000, not $250 billion, $250 billion in profits. CEO pay, shockingly, went up 40%.
Yeah.
40%.
Right.
It's 40% of a giant number, right?
It's an enormous industry. And
and what workers' wages over that same period increased 6%.
right. And
Of a smaller number.
And the UAW has been fighting also where they're building these battery plants
Yes.
that are being subsidized by things like the CHIPS Act and some of these other federal funding bills. They're building these battery plants for automobiles, like the one that's coming up in Indiana and New Carlisle that's going to serve, I think, General Motors. but the people who work there are making roughly half of the starting wage of a UAW employee in
And
an auto plant.
why is that? Because they're spinning them off and calling them different companies.
Well, for now, I think the answer is because they can.
Yeah.
But these battery employees are making a lot of noise, and I think that with some other things, the federal government's taken an approach like if you're going to get federal subsidies,
Yes.
you're going to do the right thing. You're gonna go with the spirit of these subsidies, which is to help workers. So I'm hoping to see some kind of action where they get some support to join the UAW as UAW members that. Just like the people working on the assembly lines. If they're making the batteries, it's the same thing as the guys who used to make the engines,
Of
who
course,
were,
of course. And
full-fledged
look,
UAW members.
I think there's a couple of pronged approach, right? The UAW needs to obviously go out and organize. Number two, don't be double-breasted to these companies, right? Don't spin off a company and go, well, that company's non-union, even though it's the same company.
So that's what double-breasting, you
Yes,
use that term.
sorry.
That's tell us what that is.
It's a company that has a union shop, if you will, and then a non-union shop. And, it happens all the time. It's enough to drive you crazy. It's almost like if you've ever heard of the Texas two-step, where a company declares bankruptcy in Texas and they move all their assets to another company and they call it, Johnson & Johnson 2, and they're protected from bankruptcy, and the company that is in bankruptcy has no more money to pay. Right. It's literally called the Texas two-step.
Interesting.
Companies go double-breasted, so they'll have a union division, and then, lo and behold, they'll have a non-union division where they make, for example, batteries, and they're going to pay their workers less. Yeah, that also needs to stop. So UAW, I think, hopefully can rectify that in this set of negotiations, and unfortunately a strike. But what else can happen is, like you just said, Ed, I think, and it makes perfect sense. If the companies are taking money, right, taking grants and getting U.S. dollars, which are taxpayers' dollars, right? It's your and mine and all our listeners' money, and taking those dollars and cents and using them to make a profit.
Yeah,
there should be a prevailing wage for anything that touches taxpayer money.
Well, for sure.
At the end,
and
right?
the U.S. Department of Labor, we talked about this maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
they revised prevailing wage laws
for the first time in however.
Yeah,
many
just
years.
because so many of these incentives and subsidies were taken to build factories in the South,
right,
where you could do it with a lower wage workforce.
Sure.
So people were like, okay, well, we'll build factories, and we'll build them where we have the cheapest available labor possible.
Right.
And the federal government just said, like, not happening. If you're going to do this and you're going to try to sort of exploit a loophole in this funding that's supposed to benefit middle class workers,
right,
you're going to pay higher wages. You're just going to, or don't take the subsidies. We're not here as taxpayers to help the rich get richer.
And how does and once again, go back to this, Ed, because you've said this well in the past. How does a prevailing wage work? What is it based on?
It's based on what we would call prevailing, or the most common wage rate paid for a kind of work within a geographic area. So if 100,000 people are carpenters in Ken County, South Carolina, what is the most common wage, or the most frequently paid wage for that work? That would be the prevailing wage.
And down there, because it's a right to work state, it's probably $15 an hour.
Right, it's a lot lower than it would be here. But anything where federal dollars are being used, in a place like South Carolina, some states have their own prevailing wage laws. But using South Carolina as an example, you have to, if you're taking taxpayer dollars to build that, or to fund a project, you have to pay that prevailing wage. And the idea is you're not going to use taxpayer money to undercut a labor market.
That's right. And so the concept is a floor, right, of a wage. And you would rather obviously work in a place that has high union density, thus the prevailing wage itself is higher.
Yeah.
Right? Because union density equals higher wages.
Right.
In these southern states and places that are right to work states that don't have high union density, the prevailing wage is lower. It just seems to me kind of simple. I know we're off topic from the UAW for a second, but it just seems to be like, hey, everybody, join a union, boost up the wages, and you're helping not only yourself, but you're helping people that aren't in a union yet. Right?
For sure.
Look what the Teamsters just did. Right? They settled with UPS, and laugh about it. Right? And you remember Larry Sanders? You remember that TV show?
It was a good show.
It was a funny show. There was an episode where somebody in his world they gave him a job at the show, and all the guy wanted to do was work at UPS. And they kind of made fun of it, like, oh, that's so funny. And he's like, why do you, I could wear shorts and drive in a truck and, whatever, that'd be my job. Well, now that job pays $170,000 between wages and benefits.
Right.
Guess what? I wouldn't mind driving around in a truck wearing
It's a good
shorts
job.
that's now air conditioned.
Good jobs, you have to fight for them.
And why shouldn't you? And UPS is making a ton of money. And
Right.
I don't know. I think I didn't see UPS stock take a dive, right?
Right.
So we're off of the UAW. We
gotta
get
take
back
a quick
to it.
break.
Yeah, we'll take a quick break.
And we'll wrap up UAW and get into a few other things.
I got to stop running my mouth.
Yes, you do.
Sorry.
All right. Stay with us. We'll be right back for more Workers' Mike here on 720 WGN. Welcome back, everybody, to the Workers' Mike right here on 720 WGN. Which, did you know... Do you know what WGN stands for?
I just found out.
Did you?
Yeah.
Where'd you find out?
World's greatest newspaper, even though it's a radio station.
It is a radio station.
That makes zero sense to me.
Well, it was owned by the Chicago Tribune.
But why would you name a radio station world's greatest newspaper?
I think the newspaper owned the radio station, so they just thought it would be fun to plug the newspaper in the name of the radio station.
That's interesting.
I don't dislike it.
It sounds kind of like an urban myth, to be honest with you.
I think it's true.
You'd think it's true?
It sounds like it's true, but
Well, you would think we would know because we're on the show.
Well,
like we're on this actual station. You would think we would know what these letters stand for.
I bet our loyal listeners probably know better than we do right now. But that's going to change because we're going to go on a fact-finding mission this week, and we're going to get to the bottom of this.
We're going to get to the history of WGN.
WGN.
That's great.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
So let's finish up on the UAW because we got off topic.
We did indeed, as we very often do. But the UAW, they are, they're looking for cost of living adjustments to their wages. They're looking to stop this tiered system of workers where, older workers have sort of the legacy pay and benefits,
Sure.
and they bring in new workers at lower pay, lower benefits. Because in any industry, when companies do that, they slowly watch the older workers retire, or if they have to lay people off, they'll lay off the older workers, and then you wind up with a workforce of low pay, low benefit workers. And it takes time to do, and companies always think that they're so clever and they're just going to sneak this through. But it's blatant, it's clear. The big three are doing that, and so the UAW wants to fight back against that. So over the next couple of weeks, the contract is going to near expiration, and the members have, as we said in the last segment, by a 97-3 margin percentage, not workers. There's 145,000 of them. They've authorized a strike, so they're ready. They will go out, and it will impact the auto industry if they do.
Well, it's got to bring it to a screeching halt because I read a couple of things that some of the automakers are sending out messages to their middle management like, hey, everybody, get ready to work on the line.
Yeah.
Well, that means, in plain English, get ready to lose 3 fingers and, a foot because you have no idea what you're doing.
Well, the terminology was all the white-collar workers better be ready to do blue-collar labor.
Yeah, and good luck.
And we talked about that a little bit last week when we at Local 150, we had a strike in the material producing pits and quarries last summer.
Uh-huh.
And you take supervisors and you have them loading trucks all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And within the first, 2 hours of the strike, there were trucks flipping over because they'd been loaded, without the proper balance. So people are good at their jobs. People should be kind of left and trusted to do their jobs. And if you think you can just plug in management and they will know how to make cars, get ready for recalls, I'm thinking, but it doesn't serve the public good.
Don't buy a car made during a strike.
That's a good point. That is a very good thought.
And also, if you're a middle management, just refuse to cross a picket line. Refuse to do struck work. Just say no. Like, I'm not going to do that. And you know how you can do it and still save your job? You can say that I'm in reasonable fear for my safety because I don't know what I'm doing, and that action is protected by the National Labor Relations Act. I think.
I'm gonna
caveat that with I think.
Yeah.
So one of you test it out. But hey, listen, I hope that UAW gets what they have coming to them. They work very, very hard. They've taken a lot of pain and suffering.
Right.
You're watching still to this day, companies shipping these jobs overseas. I think it's incumbent on both the United States, to be blunt with you, to insource that work again, and we're starting to see it. Penalize companies for shipping work overseas or to Mexico, where you get low wage workers, et cetera, because it's just a race to the bottom. And then UAW, go get them, and also UAW, go organize the South, right? I know it's easier said than done, but you got to keep slugging at that. You got to keep swinging at organizing the plants in the South, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to do it. So anyway, we wish them all the luck, and we'll be talking.
We'll keep
that.
up on this.
What else? There's another strike, right?
So in Joliet over this past week, about 500 nurses that were with Ascension Health, it's a hospital system in Joliet.
Yeah,
they went on a 2-day strike.
And then what was and by the way, for those of you that are not in the Chicagoland area, Joliet is a suburb of Chicago, but it's a city.
Right.
It's actually a relatively large city. I think it's probably like the third or fourth largest city in the state of Illinois. And it's about, what, 90 miles from 60 miles from Chicago?
It's probably 50, 60 miles from downtown.
Which is 16 hours in Chicago traffic.
yeah, especially on a Sunday. But so the nurses said that they were going to go out on a 2-day strike. And, I'm never a fan of saying how many days you're going to go out on strike. I mean, nurses, it's challenging because you're leaving a community, Well,
you're leaving people helpless.
Right. Yeah. So when they came back to go back to work after 2 days, they were locked out. So the hospital locked them out for 2 additional days, saying that
we're going to show you.
Well, they had to hire. What they said was they had to hire temporary staffing of nurses, and to do that, they had to promise in the contract they would provide at least 4 days of work. So it was a 2-day strike followed by a 2-day lockout, and then workers returned to work yesterday, Saturday.
First of all, can you get unemployment when they lock you out? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's a waiting period or not. Second of all, if you're a temp agency and you're filling jobs that people are literally striking over, shame on you.
Right.
Don't do that. Don't be a strike breaker. Don't be a scab.
That's your weekly shame on you from Ken Edwards.
Yeah, just don't send them there. You got 1 million nurses at your disposal, and do you want those nurses, by the way, taking care of your elderly parents, the ones that are willing to cross a picket line and take somebody else's job? No, you don't.
And one of the things that drove this strike was that hospital system used to have, I think, 800 nurses, and now they're down to about 500. People are leaving, and they're not being replaced, and the workers are seeing, they're friends. They talk to each other like any workers, and the people who leave that system are finding jobs as nurses elsewhere and getting raises of 30, 35%. So it's a staffing question, it's a pay question. I mean, like anything, you get what you pay for, and if you're one of 10 hospitals that nurses can choose to work at and you pay lower than anyone else, you're not going to get the best people out there. So
come work for the MCL clinics and Premise Health.
Yeah.
Right?
Good. It's expanding 5 health centers this year.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that coming up in the next couple of weeks, but come work for the people. And enjoy what you do, by the way. Right. So they're back to work now.
They're back to work.
Okay.
And they're still fighting for a contract, but they will be back to work.
And speaking of strikes, obviously we'd be remiss to not talk about the actors and
the writers
strike that's still going on. There was what I thought was pretty cool here in Chicago. The cast and crew of Chicago PD, which I think is Chicago Police Department.
You think?
I'm
do you think?
sure
Do you think that, Ken? PD stands for Police Department.
Well,
I think that's a pretty good guess.
That's my educated guess.
Yeah.
So there's like a Chicago everything, right? Chicago Fire, Chicago Police, and blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
The Bear. They should have just called that Chicago Beef.
Good one.
I don't know.
Chicago Beef.
I love that show.
I watched the first few. I didn't love it.
Well, whatever. It's pretty highbrow stuff.
It's very highbrow. But the cast stepped up and they dropped in some money to help out their out-of-work, what are called PAs, and PAs are production assistants, and they are literally like the people on a television show or a movie set that
clean up, get coffee,
clean up spilled milk.
Right.
Yeah, it's the lowest of the entry-level ways into.
And the people who are most impacted immediately when work stops.
And they're probably making really a low wage to begin with. So these folks from Chicago PD, the cast and the crew, they stepped up and they dropped some money in to help these folks out. So kudos to them for doing that. I think that's awesome. And if you've been following, the actors especially, a bunch of high-profile actors have started to drop in 7-figure numbers into a fund to help out actors that are about to lose their house and can't make the rent. And Drew Carey, I think, did the Bob's Big Boy free meals for everybody.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, he funded it. So they're starting to take care of their own. And I will go back to this. I continue to think that there should be something called a forever fund, or make something else up. But for these actors and actresses and baseball players and football players and basketball players and people that have gotten unbelievably rich,
Right.
drop some money back into a fund to take care of, like, the nurses that went on strike, because those nurses are the ones that went to see your movie, right? The working class made you a multi-millionaire, right? If not a billionaire, because they went and they bought your product, they go to your concerts, they buy your T-shirts. That's your audience.
Right.
Give back. Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
She dropped like 100 grand to her truck drivers for the tour.
For each one. And I forget how many there were, but it came
wasn't
out
small.
Yeah, it was like a $50 million spend on her part.
And God bless her for doing that.
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's really, really cool. And that's the spirit, I think, of what I'm trying to.
I was reading about when she had donated the money to the truck drivers who, pull around all the lighting and the pieces of the stage and all the pyrotechnics and whatever. And a lot of times it's people who are away from home for 40 weeks out of the year.
Yeah.
These people are not, I mean, they're working, but they're not well off. So they're working on the most high profit tour of all time by far.
Right.
And she's giving them a taste of it. It was her
nice.
decision and her dad's decision, I think.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. But with the Screen Actors Guild, you think of actors as very, very, they've all got to be millionaires, right? But the reality couldn't be any further from that. The Screen Actors contract is almost like setting minimums,
right?
And the vast majority of screen actors and writers, I mean, they get residual checks for like less than $1 in the mail. They'll get a check that is
I've seen
worth
some of that on
less than the stamp that it was that was used to mail it to them.
Right.
So I think Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was the first one to pledge $1 million, and then George Clooney and Meryl Streep joined in and said, "Hey, we're going to start working the phones."
And a few more have as well.
Yeah, they got up to, I think, $15 million.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think that
more of that.
Listen, absolutely more of that. And whatever the silver lining, in my opinion, is that this strike by the writers and the actors and actresses at the same time has really shined an enormous spotlight on labor. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's the most high-profile strikes, other than like baseball players or football players, et cetera. And you don't see a lot of those anymore. This is really, really high-profile.
And almost 90% of Americans support the strike. I think it was 87% was the number last week.
And they're talking now labor parlance, right? They're talking unions. And all of a sudden the actors and actresses, I think, have sort of had an epiphany, if you will, that said, you know what? Maybe we're not as much of a guild anymore as we are a labor union.
Yeah.
Right? An actual union. And maybe we need to start talking about unions and working people and working class and wage conditions, or wages and conditions of employment and things that we, of course, in the building trades have been talking about since, the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
But it seems like it's starting to get into the vernacular, if you will, of public discussion, and it needs to be, and that's a good thing. Right?
Yeah.
So if there's any silver lining over the strike, it's that these issues are now coming to the forefront.
Yeah, we need to see this. We need to see a big win here. For the length of this fight, they need to win, and when they do,
and like you said, Ed, they need to win big.
Right.
And
they'll show everyone else this is what you can do. The fight is not a fun one.
Yeah.
The people will struggle during the fight, but at the end of it, if it protects the work for the next generation, for the next 10, 20 years, it will have been worth it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I more to come on that. I know that they're finally back talking again. I know that the studios, made a little, move that they thought was clever to release their proposals directly to the members, and the members literally scoffed at and said, oh, yeah. Yeah, right. We all reject that proposal. Right? Like, ooh, smart move, studios.
Yeah.
Like, who's advising you?
Yeah, a little miscalculation there. Like, let us tell you this terrible proposal.
Yeah, you know what? If you hear it directly from us, you will take this horrible proposal.
Yeah, backfire.
Yeah, really a terrible idea.
We've got to take a quick break.
Yeah, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back. We'll finish up the show. You've been listening to The Workers' Mic right here on 720 WGN.
Everybody, welcome back to the Workers' Mic right here on 720 WGN.
Good to be back.
Good to be back.
So, real quick, I know we only have a couple minutes. This guy, I don't know anything about him. His name is Jake Paul. Apparently, he was like a Disney person when he was young, and then started a YouTube channel, something to do with like fighting, mixed. What do they call it? Mixed martial arts,
Mixed
MMA,
martial arts, yeah,
something like that. And everybody thought he was kind of like I don't know. He wasn't the most popular person in the world, but he made trillions of dollars doing whatever it is he did.
Trillions.
Trillions.
That's a lot.
It's almost what Elon Musk makes.
Yeah.
But now he's trying to start a union for MMA fighters.
So I know he's trying to start a rival to the UFC, because it's always been his position that, you know, the top people, the top fighters in UFC make a ton of money and everybody else makes nothing. And the owner, president, CEO, whatever of UFC, Dana White, and Jake Paul have a lot of feuds going on. And I mean, I'm not an enormous Jake Paul fan. I've always gotten the sense that he's a guy who had a YouTube channel saying, I'm going to be the greatest boxer in the world. I'm the greatest boxer in the world. And he would trot out, you know, like people who were 10 years past their prime, and he'd beat up on them a little bit in an amateur fight and say, look, I'm beating a champion here. But, I mean, he fought Mayweather. He fought Anderson Silva, the UFC guy who was great for a long time.
And I think the two of them are actually working together to try and start this union.
I still think if you put Jake Paul in the ring with anybody who's right at the top of their game, I mean, understandably so. He's not a total long-time fighter. He's just getting into this. But I think he would get destroyed by anybody who's actually at the top of their game.
Well, I hope Jake Paul actually listens to this and comes and kicks your ass.
Well, he might. He might. So I guess that's the challenge.
You're challenging him to fight.
Jake Paul. Yeah, why not?
You hear that, Jake?
I'm pretty sure he doesn't listen. I'm actually banking on the fact that he doesn't.
Yeah, well, guess
I'm making fun of him, but he would.
Guess who's sending him this clip? Jake Paul's going to kick your ass.
Everybody.
And more importantly, Jake Paul started a union. So
he did.
Jake, and he said, you know, and once again, say what you want. I don't know anything about him, but he did say, he's like, God, this is hard. He's like, this is not as easy as I thought. He's like, there's a lot that goes into us. We're dumping a lot of money into this.
You know what?
As well.
I'll tell you what. I appreciate his efforts, and so I'm going to go ahead and withdraw my challenge to fight Jake Paul.
Oh, you can't. Too late.
Okay, fine. I'm in then.
Yeah, you're totally in.
Bring it, Jake.
All right. You know where the fight's going to be? Pennsylvania. You know why?
Why is that?
Because Pennsylvania right now is pushing for a 4-day work week.
They are.
How cool is that?
For any company that has more than 500 employees.
Wow.
It was just introduced as a bill. So we'll see where it goes. Sometimes these types of things fail for a couple years before they get enough steam to get done. But the fact that it's being seriously discussed in a state or a commonwealth, if you will, like Pennsylvania, that's a big deal. And there have been a lot of companies, and there was a study, I think, in the United States and Canada where a number of companies, we reported on it here on the show.
I think it was Germany.
Was it Germany?
Yeah.
Okay, well, they tested it out and found that companies that did this, the workers were really, they were really happy. And at the end of it, when it was like, what kind of pay increase would it take for you to go back to 5 days a week?
And there was like, you couldn't.
You couldn't do it. They're just like, I'll quit if I go back to 5 days a week.
Now, you work 4 days a week, right?
What's that?
You work 4 days
I
a week.
work 7 days a week, baby. But yeah, I mean, if the companies that did it, they found that their productivity went up. I mean, people work.
So when I was doing contracts, Ed, and in 150 land, and this happens in lots of industries, unions will go in and negotiate what we call 410s.
Right.
Or 12s, and a lot of nurses have that. They go 3 12s on and then 2 days off, and the 410s were extremely popular. The downside for us was it had a negative effect on overtime, unfortunately, because it took away the ability to work some overtime in the morning and potentially in the afternoons, right? Because you're working 10-hour days instead of 8-hour days, so you're shortening the potential for overtime by two hours. The trade-offs, however, were enormous, having 3-day weekends or 3 days off in a row, meaning you can give your spouse a break at home, take care of the kids, spend more time with the family. They were very, very popular, and you know, to a person, if we could get 4-day work weeks, I think, you know, who wouldn't like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, if it's good for the company, and all the studies that have been done in different countries have shown that productivity does not go down. Productivity in many cases is better with happier employees
Sure.
that feel like they have more time. So the workers are happy. Businesses are staying just as, if not more, profitable.
Right.
It's a win-win, and so it's good to see that something that workers have wanted for a long time is being taken
would
seriously.
Pennsylvania be the first state to do, or first Commonwealth, I guess, to do that? Probably,
I don't know.
right?
I mean, it's qualified by companies over 500 people. I don't know if any other state has tried to do something. I'm not aware of any state that's been successful, but I think it's a conversation being had across the country right now.
We'll definitely keep an eye on that because. But here, let me just tell you what's going to happen. Let's say it happens, right? And that people are working 4 days. Well, then it's going to be like, it'd be great, 3 days.
Well, I mean, the people.
And then it'd be really good.
People did
2 days.
People did die.
How about no days?
People died on the streets in Chicago for the 5-day work week.
That's for sure.
And you know what they would say? They'd be proud of us for fighting for 4 days.
You think?
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm down with 4 days.
So speaking of that, we've got to wrap it up. We are out of time.
Well, thanks to Mother Jones for sitting in with us here. Ed has Mother Jones' little cutout in front of his microphone. That's pretty cool.
Big fan. Yeah.
Huge fan.
Yeah.
We'll have her on one day.
It goes nicely with your new monocle, Monopoly Man.
You think we'll have Mother Jones on?
Probably not. We had the closest thing to Mother Jones on a couple of weeks ago.
So I heard it was awesome.
Absolutely. So,
all right, listen, we will see you next week, which will be our pre-Labor Day show.
That's right.
Right? That'll be fun. We'll have some cool news and surprises for you guys, maybe even some prizes and contests.
Yeah.
And that's it for this week. We'll be back next week right here on 720 WGN.